Hello and welcome to US Election Watch. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Today we're going to get you the very latest in the election that the world is watching. But first up, the headlines. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris clash over September date rules. Donald Trump demands that the rules should remain the same. Harris calls to unmute the mics. Donald Trump slams Kamala Harris and Joe Biden over Afghanistan's chaotic withdrawal. Kamala Harris says that the Biden's right to withdraw was right to withdraw from Afghanistan in 2021. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg accuses White House of COVID censorship. Zuckerberg claims the Joe Biden administration repeatedly pressured Meta to take down several accounts and several messages from his platform. RFK Jr. says that he was asked to serve on Trump's transition team. He says that looking at policy issues together, RFK Jr. says. The big story on US Election Watch today, Kamala Harris's camp is now trying to reverse a rule that President Joe Biden's team secured for the upcoming debate with Donald Trump. This was a rule that was fixed for the June face-off that effectively ended Joe Biden's prospects for a second term. But that rule said that that microphones would be muted when it was not the speaker's turn to speak. Now, Donald Trump's campaign is pushing back, although the ex-president on Monday did appear to undermine the position of his own team, saying he would prefer to use the mute button. So the no live mics stance is also at odds with Donald Trump's campaign demand in 2020 when it wanted the microphones to remain. So this is really turning out to be a big controversy between the two candidates as to whether or not they want the mics, whether or not they want the audience. As I said, in the last debate that took place in June, where it was a no mics live situation, well, it ended Joe Biden's prospects for a second term, and which way it goes remains to be seen. All eyes on the 10th of September, first face-off between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
We're thinking about it. They also want to change the rules. You know, the deal was we keep the same rules. Now all of a sudden they want to make a change in the rules because she can't answer questions. Why doesn't she do a couple of question answer? Why doesn't she do something like I'm doing right now? She can't talk. We can't have another dummy as a president, okay? We cannot have a dummy.
All right, that was Donald Trump saying effectively why the rules should change, even though, well, the candidate he's now competing against has changed. Now, Vice Presidential candidate Senator J.D. Vance will speak about the economy and inflation today in one of the battleground states of Michigan. Meanwhile, there's also an update coming in for Kamala Harris and Walz's bus tour that Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, are preparing to kick off a bus tour starting Wednesday in the key state, another important state, which is Georgia. It will be the first time that they'll be campaigning together, and the trip also underscores the focus on the key state. Remember, it all boils down to the 7-odd swing states in US where 2/3 of the energy, time, funding, focus of the campaigns of the two candidates will be pretty much geared towards. But let's listen in also to another soundbite of Donald Trump in Michigan.
We are not just going to make America great again. We're going to make American democracy great again. We're going to bring it back. My opponent, Kamala Harris, and Tim Walz are promising the exact opposite. They want endless war, open borders, voting rights, and free health care for illegal aliens, Soviet-style price controls, censorship, unlimited migration from terrorist hotspots, and unchecked power for the deep state. This fight is no longer between Democrats and Republicans. This is a fight between communism and freedom. It's a very serious fight.
All right. So that, of course, was Donald Trump speaking in Michigan. Now let's come to the big focus of the show today, which is around what Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's policies are going to be, foreign policy, especially regard to the Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran region. Extremely crucial. Also in focus right now, given that Donald Trump slammed Harris and Biden over the chaotic withdrawal of US soldiers from Afghanistan 3 years back, even as Kamala Harris hit back, saying that Biden was right to withdraw from Afghanistan, though many people did call those that entire process of withdrawal extremely chaotic, unplanned, and left the country in complete tatters. This is August 2021 footage and images that are on your screen that tells how unplanned the entire exit from Afghanistan was for America. And now that's become a crucial election issue. So Afghanistan is now an important poll issue in these elections, and that's exactly what I will first get my guests Raymond, Vickory and Michael Kugelman to speak on. But before that, viewers, take a look at this report that tells you the context of why this discussion is so important.
Caused by Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, the humiliation in Afghanistan set off the collapse of American credibility and respect all around the world.
Present! Out!
Former US President Donald Trump has slammed President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris on the 3-year anniversary of a bombing at the Kabul airport that killed 13 US service members and more than 100 Afghans. Speaking at a National Guard Association of the US conference in Detroit, Trump labeled the Afghanistan withdrawal as the most embarrassing day in the history of our country, adding that it ignited conflict across the globe. Earlier this month, Taliban marked the 3rd anniversary since they seized power in Afghanistan. The ceremony was held in Bagram, where the former US military base was located.
It gave us Russia going into Ukraine. It gave us the October 7th attack on Israel, because it gave us lack of respect. We're not respected. We were respected very much 4 years ago. We're not respected now.
The US had a chaotic exit from Afghanistan in 2021, with Taliban taking over the country quite easily. It is seen by many as a stain on the Biden administration's record. It has pushed some families of the troops killed in the airport attack to join Republican criticism. Some of these families were seen at the Republican National Convention held in July. The Republican Party is seeking to tie Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris to the chaotic exit after Biden decided not to seek a re-election. Republicans claim Harris was central to the decision-making behind Afghanistan. The party argues that she was in the room when Biden made the horrible exit plans. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report for NDTV World. All right, Michael Kugelman, Director, South Asia Institute of the Wilson Center. Raymond Vickory, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joining me on the broadcast. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time. And in fact, Mr. Vickory, let me start with you, sir. Do you think now Afghanistan is going to be an important poll issue in these elections? We've just about 65 days left in these elections, but how do you view that? Do you think Afghanistan could now be an important aspect and a poll issue?
Well, thanks very much for having me. I think that this is a desperate attempt by Donald Trump to try to counteract the bad publicity he's gotten from calling fallen American soldiers suckers and losers, for saying about Senator John McCain that he preferred people who didn't get captured, for saying that the former Chief of Staff, General Milley, ought to be executed for treason. Now he's trying to cover himself with the exit and tying it in to everything. If you listen to what you just played, his segment says that because of the Afghanistan withdrawal that we have the problem with Ukraine and with Hamas, forgetting, of course, that he's been big buddies with Putin, that he has said to Netanyahu that Netanyahu ought to be allowed to finish the job. Now, it's true that the withdrawal didn't go as smoothly as it should, but it should be remembered that, in fact, it was Trump who negotiated with the Taliban and agreed to withdraw. The real question is how great democracies like the United States and India can work together to bring peace and stability to the region with justice. And that's not going to be done stepping back from alliances.
Okay. Michael Kugelman, comment on that. We're going to come on to the blame game between Harris and Biden in just a bit. But the larger question, is Afghanistan a poll issue in these elections?
I don't really think we should overstate the impact that it'll have in the election. Afghanistan is something that you rarely hear about in Washington or in the U.S. Broadly. And, when the U.S. was still fighting the war, it was regarded as the forgotten war because even then people didn't talk about it. But especially since the withdrawal, it really has not been an issue of policy debate or an issue of public debate. It's not surprising that Donald Trump has made it a campaign issue just because, indeed the withdrawal, which as Ray said, Trump did support, the withdrawal itself was implemented in a botched fashion. So it's not a surprise that Trump made it into a political issue. But I really don't think that it's going to be a major issue in the campaign. I think that other foreign policy issues will be much more impactful on the presidential campaign, including the administration's policies in Gaza and its relationship with Israel, perhaps the Iran issue. But I think when it comes to Afghanistan, it's really not going to be a big issue. And I think that Donald Trump will continue to push it out there. Just because he does have certain constituencies that would want him to say that, but I really don't think that we should overstate the impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. The other aspects of the foreign policy we will come to in another episode. We have 65, 68 days to cover, and we are really doing a show every day to dissect every aspect of the US elections. But, if we are talking about the Afghanistan, Pakistan and the Iran, if we take that entire piece together, though of course it's not totally homogeneous, but if we were to, Raymond, Vickory, the larger question, how do you see this being raised by Donald Trump in terms of a larger impact that he's trying to create? Do you expect that it could have any impact within or resonate with the voters?
Well, I think what he's trying to do is to play the blame game, as you've indicated. And that is everything bad that's happened in the world was the fault somehow of Kamala Harris. That's his stock in trade. He doesn't really need to go into facts or the causation. I would say that, it's very disappointing to me as an American that Donald Trump takes one of the most sacred sites in the United States, that is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which has been a point of bipartisan reverence for forever, and tries to turn it into a political event. I think that in regard to what happens in South Asia with Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, the Trump approach will be transactional, that if he can find some benefit to himself in it, he'll try to use it. But it really does not have any implication, it seems to me, in the longer run for policy. That's going to be determined in other ways.
Okay.
I think that the question of our troops is always forefront of American minds, but I doubt that this, as they say in the South, I don't think this dog is going to hunt.
Okay. But the larger question, Michael Kugelman, if one were to say that is this election going to essentially be, or is Donald Trump's strategy essentially going to be about, how the Joe Biden administration's achievements, failures, ups and downs essentially become that of Kamala Harris's? And is that something that Kamala Harris would have to actively work towards ensuring it doesn't happen? She comes out with her own policy charter to ensure she can de-link herself with the Biden administration.
Right. Yes, I think that will be the challenge for Kamala Harris. And indeed, as she served as President Biden's vice president, so naturally she would be linked to the president and linked to the administration, and that certainly applies in the Afghanistan context. I myself do not know exactly how involved she was in decisions related to the botched withdrawal. I mean, we've heard President Trump and others indicate that she had a very major role. We don't know, but because of the fact that she was vice president, and then because the fact that she's now the presidential candidate, her association with Biden, including in the context of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, is going to be something that she will need to respond to. We'll see how that plays out. But again, I don't think we should be surprised that Trump has decided to make the Afghanistan withdrawal issue a political issue, even though, indeed, he wanted to withdraw as well. And had he won re-election, and had he been president when the U.S. had implemented the withdrawal, who knows if the same thing wouldn't have happened? Who knows if the withdrawal wouldn't have been just as botched with him? Because I would argue that successive U.S. administrations, including the Trump administration, had made a lot of mistakes in Afghanistan, including not recognizing how quickly or how much Afghan security forces were failing. So who knows? We may have had the same situation play out if Trump were still president when the withdrawal took place. But I think that this Afghanistan issue will remain a big issue. I don't think that Afghanistan and Pakistan together will be a major issue in the campaign. I also think that both a President Harris or President Trump would actually take fairly similar positions to the two countries. They wouldn't really be priorities. Iran would be of a bit of a difference. I think that we've seen that President Trump would be willing to take a much harder line against Iran. But given how things have gone with events in the Middle East over the last year or so, we've seen that the Democrats or the Biden administration also take a significant shift in approaches to Iran, wanting to take a hardline approach as well. So all the three countries you mentioned, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, I imagine that whoever wins the election, the policy toward those three countries will be fairly similar.
Mr. Raymond Vickory, you agree that it could largely be continuation of the U.S. stance? I know Iran warrants a separate episode altogether of U.S. election watch, but nevertheless, if one were to include that in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran geography, do you think it would largely be an extension of how the policies have been right now, irrespective of whether Donald Trump or Harris wins?
Well, I think that the good news here is that there is a strong bipartisan support in the United States politically across the spectrum for the U.S. and India relationship. And that, it seems to me, is going to be a driver. Sure, we have interest in what happens with Pakistan as to whether or not there is some semblance of democracy or stability there, and in Afghanistan. But we are committed, it seems to me, as a nation, regardless of who's at the top, to that relationship between the United States and India to bring peace and prosperity throughout the region and indeed throughout the world.
All right. Raymond Vickory, Michael Kugelman, thanks so much for joining me as we decode the U.S. elections over the next 2 months. Appreciate you joining us. All right. Shifting focus now away from Afghanistan to what Meta CEO said. He accused the White House of censorship during COVID period. Mark Zuckerberg said that he faced pressure to censor COVID-related content on Facebook. This was actually part of Mark Zuckerberg's explosive letter to the US Congress, where he said and accused the White House of censoring content. He also claimed that Biden administration had repeatedly pressurized Meta and wanted several content to be taken off. In fact, even content that was considered humorous, not offensive, was also repeatedly asked to be taken down. And in fact, Mark Zuckerberg also said that in hindsight, he regretted not speaking about it earlier. And he also said that if such a situation were to happen right now, he would probably not bow down to pressure. Take a look at this report. We come back and talk more about, well, how does free speech really stand right now in America?
In an explosive letter to the U.S. Congress, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg has alleged that the U.S. government under Joe Biden repeatedly pressured the company to censor certain content on its platforms. Zuckerberg said that the platform had to make some changes which they won't today. He added that he regrets not being more outspoken about it. Zuckerberg, one of the richest people in the world, said that the COVID content that the U.S. government wanted censored included humor and satire. The House Committee on the Judiciary of the Republican Party took to X, the social media platform, to inform about the letter. The Republican group hailed the letter as a big win for free speech. Republican leader Harriet Hageman gave it a political twist by alleging that Meta influenced the last U.S. presidential election. Zuckerberg reiterated his support for the electoral infrastructure ahead of the presidential elections in November and said that he is aware that some people believe his work benefited one party over the other, but his goal is to be neutral. With both Trump and Kamala set to visit the swing state of Georgia, it will be interesting to see how this revelation plays up. With Vishal Vivek, Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
Because the future is going to be beyond anything we can imagine.
One cannot miss the timing of Mark Zuckerberg's letter. It comes right in the middle of an election that may go down to the wire. So what does it mean as far as free speech in America, and also what does it mean in terms of questions being raised about the previous election in 2020? He made reference to it. He probably alluded to it. Remains to be seen whether this will become a bigger issue going forward. Now, shifting focus, Republicans host a forum on Trump assassination attempt, and Republican lawmakers claim that there was odd evidence, tampering, and also said that as far as Donald Trump's shooting is concerned, Republican lawmakers claim odd evidence, tampering, SWAT counter sniper backed the evidence of tampering claims, and absolutely concerning roof scrubbed, suspect body disposed. Those are really claims that are being made in terms of Donald Trump's assassination attempt that was there about a month back, that really galvanized the Republican Party, and it seemed that it also changed the mood on ground as far as the election is concerned. In the wake of that, there is now these fresh claims that are being made, even as the probe continues as far as the assassination attempt that was made on Donald Trump last month. Listen in to this soundbite on that.
In this hearing, we will identify a lot of the actual failures, but I will be first to tell you that given the fact of the untimeliness and which point this has been conducted, you will see at this stage where I think that criminal gross negligence and purposeful intent will be indistinguishable.
All right, shifting focus now to an important news update where Prime Minister Modi had a telephonic discussion with President Joe Biden, and this was in the wake of his recent visit to Ukraine, where he also met Ukraine President Zelensky. And to talk about that trip, Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi discussed this over telephone, and they also discussed the recent developments that took place in Bangladesh. Prime Minister Modi had expressed his support for peace and stability in Ukraine. Remember, the world understands and acknowledges that there are few leaders who can actually bring Russia and Ukraine on a discussion table. Prime Minister Modi could be one of them. He's also reiterated the position in favor of dialogue and diplomacy and full support for early return of peace. Both leaders emphasized on restoration of law and order in Bangladesh as well, the other key issue that was discussed between Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi. And the discussion also included ensuring safety of minorities in Bangladesh, but the US readout did skip the mention of this aspect of their discussion. Prime Minister Modi has been having a busy day after discussing with Joe Biden. He also had a telephonic discussion with Russian President Vladimir Putin, where the Ukraine war was discussed in great detail. Calls and repeated calls for peace were made again, and Prime Minister Modi reiterated that India wants a peaceful resolution to any settlement and wants this war to end soon. All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of US Election Watch. Thanks so much for watching.